In a high-stakes moment, the Arab billionaire spoke rapidly in Arabic, and to everyone's shock, the only person who responded was a young waitress. The room fell silent. In the opulent presidential conference room of the Grandview Hotel in New York City, tension crackled in the air like static electricity. A $5 billion real estate deal hung in the balance, teetering on a thread. A long table, draped in crisp white linen, was laden with legal documents and contract folders. On one side sat Charles Foster, the formidable CEO of Pinnacle Investments, one of the most prominent real estate firms in the United States, his hands gripped tightly beneath the table. Across from him was Sheikh Khalid Hassan, the influential head of the Dubai National Investment Fund. His face was unreadable, serious and focused. The contract before them was no ordinary transaction. It was a massive $5 billion project promising to transform 5 neighborhoods in Brooklyn into a model of modern, eco-friendly urban living. For months, Foster had meticulously prepared, sparing no expense. He hired the best attorneys and translators, determined to avoid any cultural missteps. But now, with everything on the line, the deal was on the verge of collapse. Sheikh Khalid, known for swift and final decisions, sat motionless yet far from passive. After hearing Foster's detailed proposal on profit sharing, delivered in clear and polished English, the sheikh suddenly switched to rapid Arabic. This sent a wave of tension rippling through the room. Foster's 2 highly paid translators, Michael Larson and Edward Ruiz, exchanged desperate glances. Despite their experience navigating delicate negotiations between American and Middle Eastern officials, they struggled. The sheikh's tone was fast, laden with financial jargon and regional nuances they couldn't keep up with. Sweat beaded on their foreheads as they floundered in vain. Foster felt as if he were plummeting into an abyss. He had overcome countless business crises before, but he had never felt such despair. The room was quiet except for the soft murmurs in Arabic between the sheikh and his advisors. "What's happening? What's he saying?" Foster demanded, leaning toward his translators. Michael wiped his brow, his voice trembling. "Sir, he's using specific Gulf financial and political terms. We're struggling to follow." Edward nodded in defeat. "He's challenging Section 4.3 of the contract, but we're not clear why." Foster's frustration surged. He had spent hundreds of thousands to ensure no such misunderstandings would occur, yet at this critical moment, his translators were useless. He glanced at his assistant, Richard Bennett, silently pleading for a solution. Bennett only offered a helpless shrug. Suddenly, Sheikh Khalid's voice rose, and he struck the table, the sound echoing off the luxurious walls. His advisors nodded in agreement, their patience visibly waning. Both sides were at a loss for how to proceed. Foster knew one thing. If he didn't act quickly, Sheikh Khalid would walk away, and the deal would collapse with him. As he braced himself to plead, movement came from the corner of the room. Jennifer Carter, a young hotel waitress in a pristine uniform, had been quietly refilling coffee cups, as she had for the past 3 days. She had been present throughout the negotiations, unnoticed by the powerful figures in the room. But she wasn't just listening. She understood everything and knew why the sheikh was upset. She knew it was risky, even dangerous, to speak out and defy expectations. Yet her sense of justice and belief that she could help propelled her forward. Setting down the coffee pot, she stepped into the light and spoke in perfect Arabic, clear and confident. "Your Excellency, Sheikh Khalid," she said, "if I may, I understand the cause of the misunderstanding." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Foster was stunned. Bennett froze. Even Sheikh Khalid paused, raising an eyebrow in surprise. Jennifer Carter, a waitress who had been invisible until that moment, now held the fate of a multi-billion-dollar deal and Foster's legacy in her hands. The presidential suite, once indifferent to her presence, now hung on her every word. Moments ago, she had been part of the background, but now the woman in the neatly pressed black and white uniform, who left her modest apartment in the Bronx each morning, stood resolute. Her face was calm, her voice steady, though her heart raced. She had never sought attention, having spent her life avoiding it, but now she stood squarely in its center. Her eyes locked onto Richard Bennett, the cold executive vice president of Pinnacle Investments. Over the past few days, she had become familiar with him, not for his kindness but for his arrogance. Always impeccably dressed, with slicked-back hair and a rigid posture, Bennett had barely acknowledged her. Even as she served him coffee, he never met her eyes. Every day he'd curtly say, "Miss Carter, hurry up and don't interfere. We don't want our international guests thinking we're unprofessional." Those words echoed in Jennifer's mind daily. And now, in this moment, Jennifer Carter, the overlooked, dismissed, and disrespected, was the only one who could salvage their hard work. Her words hit like an unseen punch, but Jennifer responded with a quiet, polite shake of her head and a whispered, "Yes, sir." She fully understood that Bennett's insistence on her invisibility wasn't about professionalism. It stemmed from his discomfort with her presence, a woman among powerful white executives. Whenever she approached, Bennett subtly shifted his chair away, his eyes filled with suspicion, as if her very existence threatened his position. Each small rejection stung, tightening her chest, but she bit her lip, completed her tasks quietly, and retreated to the corner as if she weren't there. What no one in the room thought to ask was that the woman pouring their coffee held a master's degree in international finance from New York University, graduating top of her class. She had previously worked at the Dubai Investment Authority, analyzing the exact financial structures now causing the crisis. Before the 2008 economic crash, Jennifer's future had been bright. Her father, David Carter, was a skilled engineer at one of New York's most respected construction firms. Their life was stable and hopeful, but when the financial system collapsed, everything crumbled. Her father's company went bankrupt, their home was repossessed, and soon after, he suffered a fatal stroke while Jennifer was still in Dubai. The tragedy changed everything. She returned home to care for her ailing mother and younger sister, abandoning a promising career. Jennifer faced a harsh reality. No one wanted to hire a woman, no matter how brilliant or experienced. She sent out hundreds of applications to banks, firms, and investment houses. Rejections came quickly, or worse, polite interviews, filled with skeptical, dismissive eyes, judging her race and background before she could speak. With no other options, she took the job at the Grandview Hotel. It didn't match her skills, but it paid the bills and allowed her to quietly pursue a PhD in international finance at Columbia. She never expected this humble job would place her at the center of a multi-billion-dollar deal, where her expertise would prove invaluable. Her words still lingered in the silent air, the presidential suite frozen in time. Richard Bennett's face twisted in anger as he shot to his feet. "Miss Carter, what do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "This isn't the time for theatrics. Go back to your work and let the professionals handle this." His voice was sharp, meant to wound, but Jennifer didn't flinch. She stood tall, head high, and faced him. "I'm not playing, Mr. Bennett," she said calmly. "I understand this negotiation and why Sheikh Khalid is dissatisfied. I only want to help." Bennett smirked, his face sour. "Help?" he scoffed, dripping with condescension. "You're a coffee server. What could you possibly know about a multi-billion-dollar deal? Are you arrogant or delusional? But before he could continue, Foster raised a hand. Hold on, Richard, he said calmly but firmly. Let her speak. Bennett hesitated, stunned, his sneer lingering but complying. All eyes returned to Jennifer, now the quiet center of the room. She took a deep breath. This was the moment to step out of the shadows. The air grew heavier, but Jennifer didn't retreat as the storm swirled around her. Her eyes scanned each face in the room, registering dismay, confusion, or dawning astonishment. Sheikh Khalid sat poised across the table, studying her carefully. His anger softened, replaced by clear interest. He silenced his advisors, wanting to hear Jennifer. But on Pinnacle's side, the mood was different. Bennett was visibly ready to explode. Michael Larson and Edward Ruiz, the translators, were wide-eyed. A hotel waitress fluent in Arabic. It shattered their stereotypes. What did you say? Bennett hissed through clenched teeth, his ego bruised by Jennifer's words. His tone brimmed with resentment. Jennifer remained calm. She repeated slowly, clearly, and carefully in English for all to understand. I said, the issue lies in a critical mistranslation, specifically in section 4.3 in Arabic. The voting preference rights were translated as absolute voting control. This gives the impression that Pinnacle seeks full authority if performance goals aren't met. That's not what the contract intends. Bennett fell silent, lips pursed, eyes dark with anger. Jennifer's explanation struck his pride directly. Instead of accepting it, he tried to discredit her. And how would someone like you, a waitress, know the difference? He spat. Did you read a few finance books and think you're smarter than our legal team? Some in his group chuckled smugly, finding it absurd that this woman could outshine their highly paid experts. But Charles Foster didn't laugh. He leaned forward, hands clasped, studying Jennifer carefully. His eyes narrowed, not in judgment but in assessment. In this small woman, something rare emerged: intelligence, courage, clarity. Jennifer met his gaze steadily. Mr. Foster, she said with quiet strength, I graduated with a master's in international finance from New York University. I worked 2 years at the Dubai Investment Authority. I know this world, its terms, expectations, and people. This isn't guesswork. I know what I'm talking about. Her words revealed a truth that struck deeper than anyone expected. She calmly explained that the mistranslation led Sheikh Khalid to believe Pinnacle was trying to seize full project control, a breach of trust threatening to derail the deal. As her voice faded, silence engulfed the room again. No one moved, no one spoke. Even Bennett, quick to object, sat stunned, his face flushed with anger and shame. Finally, Sheikh Khalid broke the silence. His tone was calm but weighty. Miss Carter is entirely correct. That mistranslation caused serious doubts about Pinnacle's intentions, he said, with quiet authority. He looked at Jennifer with newfound respect. I am deeply impressed by your knowledge, Miss Carter. But tell me, how did someone with your experience end up serving coffee in this room? Jennifer paused, offering a calm smile. After the 2008 economic crash, my family struggled. I returned from Dubai to care for my mother and younger sister after my father's sudden passing. This job supported us and allowed me to pursue my doctorate at Columbia. It wasn't about seeking pity, but commanding respect. The room's atmosphere shifted. Sheikh Khalid nodded slowly, visibly moved. Foster, usually composed, looked shocked, a hint of guilt on his face. Pinnacle's team sat silently, while Bennett shifted uncomfortably. After a moment, Foster spoke, his voice softer, tinged with respect. Your Highness, if you allow, I propose we formally include Miss Carter in our negotiation team. Her expertise can bridge these gaps. Sheikh Khalid nodded. I agree. This is the cooperation that builds trust. In that moment, Jennifer realized something had changed. She was no longer a shadow in the background. She wasn't offered this role out of pity, but because of her merit. Yet she knew this was only the first step in a longer, tougher battle. The deep-seated biases in the room hadn't vanished. They were merely challenged. As Sheikh Khalid sat straighter, his expression softening, he spoke again, now with warmth and genuine curiosity. Miss Carter, you've made a strong impression. Tell us more about your background. I want to understand the full scope of your qualifications. It wasn't just a question. It was an invitation. A door opened, waiting for her to step through. Jennifer smiled modestly and answered clearly. I hold a master's in international finance from New York University. My thesis focused on sustainable investment strategies for Gulf sovereign wealth funds. After graduating, I joined the Dubai Investment Authority, where I worked on financial modeling for major Middle Eastern projects. The room fell silent again, but this silence was one of respect. Larson and Ruiz, the translators, exchanged shocked glances, now understanding how she caught a detail they missed. Foster raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed, while others were stunned to learn the waitress they'd ignored had shifted the entire dynamic. But not everyone was pleased. Bennett, arms crossed, a mocking smirk on his face, sat glaring. His voice dripped with resistance. Quite a resume, he sneered, but forgive me if I'm still skeptical. With those credentials, why are you pouring coffee instead of working in high finance? The insult stung. Some team members looked away, embarrassed by his tone, but none supported Jennifer. She remained steady, her heart pounding but her voice firm. My father passed suddenly, she said. Our family faced a crisis. My mother fell gravely ill, and I needed a job with flexible hours to support them while pursuing my PhD. This job at the Grandview provided both. Bennett scoffed slightly, his face smug. Interesting, he muttered. But let's be real. Catching a mistranslation doesn't mean you're qualified to sit at this table. We're talking complex, high-stakes negotiations, not just fixing a word. Foster shot him a stern look, but before he could intervene, Sheikh Khalid raised a hand. His expression was cool but resolute. Mr. Bennett, the Sheikh said, calm yet sharp. That's not how we show respect here. Miss Carter identified a mistake your highly paid experts missed. It's not a small error. It's why this deal nearly collapsed. Her words struck deeply. I trust Miss Carter, he added. If she caught a mistake your team overlooked, she deserves to be heard. More than that, she deserves a seat at this table. Bennett clenched his jaw tightly, his fists balled at his sides in frustration. Jennifer silently thanked the Sheikh's steadfast defense, but knew she couldn't always rely on others to stand up for her. With quiet confidence, she stepped forward and faced Bennett directly, her gaze steady and clear. Mr. Bennett, she said firmly, I understand your doubts, but a person's value shouldn't be measured by their title or origin. I'm not asking for trust. I'm asking to be judged based on my abilities, not your assumptions about me. Her words landed like stones in the room. A heavy silence followed. Bennett had no retort, his face shifting from shame to anger. Sheikh Khalid gave a slight nod of approval. Foster stood slowly, his voice measured and calm. We've wasted enough time on pointless arguments, he said. If Sheikh Khalid agrees, I propose we return to the negotiation, starting with the disputed sections, and I'd like Miss Carter at the table to clarify the points that caused confusion. As he spoke, Jennifer felt a shift, a real change. This wasn't just about language or contracts. It was about confronting the bias that had forced her into hiding. The air in the room grew heavier, old tensions lingering like a storm. Foster realized this wasn't a simple business choice. It was a personal test, a challenge to the values he claimed to uphold. His trusted translators, Michael Larson and Edward Ruiz, once admired by diplomats and corporate clients, had failed to catch a critical detail that nearly cost billions. Jennifer's calm voice echoed in his mind, revealing a deeper truth, his own unspoken biases, an uncomfortable reality he hadn't faced until now. Sheikh Khalid raised his hand again, commanding the room, his steady gaze fixed on Jennifer. "Mr. Foster," the Sheikh said clearly, "I want Miss Carter at the negotiation table. Her knowledge and clarity are what we need to resolve these issues and move forward. That's how I wish to proceed." The room stirred, Larson and Ruiz exchanging wide-eyed looks. Bennett snapped out of his daze. "Your Highness," he said quickly, his voice tight and urgent. "I mean no disrespect, but I must strongly object. This isn't the time to bring an untested hotel worker into a critical meeting. It could ruin everything." The Sheikh's response was unwavering, his voice cool but firm. "Mr. Bennett, my position is clear. My trust in Miss Carter is based on what she's shown, her ability, clarity, and understanding. Her role isn't defined by her uniform but by her contribution. You're free to disagree, but let me be clear. Her inclusion is my condition for continuing this discussion." Bennett was struck hard, his face contorting in frustration. He looked to Foster desperately. "Charles, seriously," his voice cracked with dismay. "You're entrusting this company's future to an unknown waitress, someone with no certification or proven track record?" Foster didn't answer immediately. He studied Jennifer, observing her steadfast presence in the face of scornful eyes. She didn't waver. There, he recalled, Pinnacle Investments had long prided itself on fairness, recognizing true talent regardless of origin, but it had never been tested like this. Straightening his shoulders, he faced Bennett directly. "Richard," he said evenly, "the translators we trusted made the mistake that nearly tanked this deal. I can't ignore that. I won't. Miss Carter has proven her ability, and I'm giving her the chance to prove it further." Bennett froze, his fists trembling as he struggled to contain himself. "You're making a mistake, Charles," he said bitterly. But Foster turned away, looking at Jennifer with a new expression, genuine trust. "Miss Carter," he said, "please take a seat at the table. I believe you can help us move forward." Jennifer nodded quietly and walked forward with dignity. Her footsteps echoed in the silence as she approached the center of the room. She sat between Foster and Sheikh Khalid, her heart racing but her face composed. She knew the weight of this moment, the most significant in her professional life thus far. The hardest battles lay ahead. Bennett remained seated, staring coldly, his pride wounded, his influence diminished, all because of a woman he'd dismissed as unworthy. And now she led the room. As Jennifer sat, she felt the Sheikh's calm, approving gaze, Foster's reliable glance, and Bennett's burning resentment. But she wasn't afraid. She had won her first battle, not with force, but with truth, composure, and undeniable expertise. She understood her greatest challenge wasn't about finance or translation. It was about dismantling the invisible walls built by people like Bennett, walls of bias, assumptions, and quiet exclusion. This was only her first step. Sitting in the sleek leather chair at the conference table, a heavy, meaningful silence enveloped the presidential suite of the Grandview Hotel. This wasn't just a change of seating. It symbolized a profound shift, exposing long-standing inequities and unspoken biases in the room. She felt every eye on her, Sheikh Khalid's radiating confidence, Foster's cautious but hopeful, and Bennett's cold, judgmental stare, brimming with resentment. Standing tense at the table's edge, his gaze was sharp as a blade. To him, Jennifer had stolen a place meant for someone else, someone like a white executive he'd have approved. He believed he needed just one mistake from her, one misstep, to justify pushing her out. Sheikh Khalid leaned forward and, in careful Arabic, asked a deeply technical question. "Miss Carter," he began, "can you explain Section 6.2, specifically the performance review mechanism and equity adjustments if targets aren't met?" The room fell silent again. Bennett smirked, waiting for her to falter, but Jennifer didn't blink. She nodded and responded in perfect Arabic, each syllable clear and precise. "Your Excellency," she began, "Section 6.2 states that if performance targets aren't met, Pinnacle must provide additional equity contributions per the agreed rates in the contract. However, the Arabic translation gave the false impression that Pinnacle could unilaterally increase its stake, as if aiming for a takeover. In reality, the original English version clearly states any additional capital requires mutual consent, ensuring balanced control." As she finished, Sheikh Khalid nodded slowly, visibly pleased, the tension in his shoulders easing. Jennifer had not only clarified the contract, but restored trust. But Bennett wasn't done. He leaned forward abruptly. "Miss Carter, that's a fine explanation. But are you certain of your interpretation of these Arabic financial law terms? I think we need verification before proceeding." Jennifer turned to face him, switching to English for all to understand. Her voice was steady, confident. "Mr. Bennett, I'm not guessing. My understanding comes from direct experience, not just language skills. I worked on these structures at the Dubai Investment Authority, designing and reviewing similar agreements." Bennett's jaw tightened, his irritation growing at her composure. Desperate to trip her up, he tried one last tactic, escalating the challenge. "Fine," he said, feigning calm. "Then explain the risk allocation waterfall in Section 8. Are you familiar?" Foster smiled at the provocation, but chose to stay silent, observing. Jennifer met Bennett's gaze unflinchingly and nodded. "Yes, I'm familiar. The waterfall structure in Section 8 dictates how profits and risks are distributed sequentially. First, project revenue repays any bank debt. Next, capital is returned to equity partners equally, and then remaining profits are split per the agreed equity shares." She paused for emphasis. The confusion arose because the Arabic translation omitted a key detail, suggesting Pinnacle had seniority in claiming returns. That's incorrect. Control and profits are equal. Bennett's face reddened, his confidence crumbling. The woman he'd dismissed as a mere waitress had delivered a comprehensive explanation, exposing yet another translation flaw others missed. Foster, calm until now, looked at Jennifer with a mix of admiration and regret. The truth was clear. She hadn't just matched his costly experts, she surpassed them. Foster realized, uncomfortably, that his own unconscious bias had nearly clouded his judgment of Jennifer's brilliance. But Jennifer didn't linger on this victory. She knew it was only the beginning of a tougher path. Across the table, Bennett's eyes still burned with resentment, his silence hiding his frustration and disdain. Yet for the first time, others in the room saw Jennifer for who she truly was. Not a waitress, not a surprise, but a sharp, capable expert. When the meeting paused for a coffee break, Jennifer stood, feeling the weight of eyes following her. But their gazes had shifted from indifference to recognition. For the first time in 3 grueling days, she no longer felt invisible. Yet beneath the acknowledgement, a swell of emotions stirred within her, the sacrifices, hardships, and grief that had brought her to this moment. She stepped into the hallway, the air cool and quiet outside the heavy boardroom doors. At the end, she opened the door to the small kitchen where the hotel staff prepared coffee for the suite. Alone, she took a deep breath, the silence stirring memories of loss, failure, and relentless efforts to be seen. A gentle voice broke her thoughts. "Jennifer, you okay?" She turned to see Teresa, a fellow waitress, standing at the door with kind eyes and a warm smile. Teresa had been the only one to show Jennifer genuine kindness since her first day at the Grandview, holding a fresh coffee cup. "I'm fine," Jennifer replied softly, a faint smile on her lips. But behind her eyes, the weight of her journey lingered. Teresa stepped closer, her voice almost a whisper, as if sharing something sacred. "I heard the staff talking in the hallway," she said. "They're amazed at what you did in there, Jennifer. But I don't get it. With your talent, why have you stayed in this job so long?" Jennifer met Teresa's open, honest eyes. For a moment, she considered deflecting, but something shifted within her. It was time to speak the truth, to share the burden she'd carried silently. She took a slow, steady breath, her voice soft but heavy, filled with unspoken pain. "I didn't choose this path, Teresa. My dad was a construction engineer. He worked every day to put me through top schools and dream big. But the 2008 financial crisis crushed everything. He lost his job, we lost our home, and soon after, he had a stroke. I was in Dubai, working at the investment authority." She paused, her voice catching but not breaking. "I came back to care for my sick mother and my younger sister, who was still in school. I needed a job with flexible hours to support them while finishing my PhD at Columbia. The Grandview offered that, so I started pouring coffee here, not because I wanted to, but because I had to." Teresa was silent, tears welling in her eyes. Jennifer's story struck her heart. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Jennifer. I should have seen what you were going through." Jennifer gently touched Teresa's hand, smiling softly. "Don't blame yourself," she said, "but I want you to understand. I'm not the only one fighting in that room. There are millions like me, trying to rise in a world that keeps pushing us down. This isn't just about one mistake or one chance. It's about being judged before we can speak, about being invisible unless we shout." Teresa wiped her tears and nodded, her sadness turning to firm resolve. "You're not alone anymore, Jennifer," she said quietly but determinedly. "I may not be as qualified as you, but I promise I'm with you always. You don't have to fight this alone." Looking at Teresa, Jennifer felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. True solidarity. It gave her renewed strength. She was no longer speaking just for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been dismissed, overlooked, or excluded because of their origins. "Thank you," Jennifer said softly, her voice full of gratitude. "You don't know how much that means to me." In the quiet room, the two women stood united by something deeper than their jobs or titles. Their friendship, born of truth and trust, would shape their lives forever. Returning to the boardroom, Jennifer immediately sensed a change. Some watched her with admiration, others with caution, still hesitant. But one gaze burned hotter than the rest: Richard Bennett's. His cold stare followed her every step. Jennifer knew the real fight was just beginning. Bennett wouldn't surrender easily. As everyone took their seats, Sheikh Khalid resumed the discussion calmly, reviewing the contract's final sections. But Jennifer felt the tension beneath the silence, especially from Bennett. At the far end of the table, Bennett pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he stepped into the hallway, ostensibly to take a call. In a rage simmering in his chest, he dialed NYU's admissions office. "This is Richard Bennett," he said sharply, "Executive Vice President of Pinnacle Investments. I need to verify a former student, Jennifer Carter. I have serious doubts about her academic claims." The phone nearly slipped from his hand at the response. "Sir," the admissions officer replied, "we've checked our records. Jennifer Carter graduated from New York University with a master's in international finance. Not only that, she graduated with top honors and received special recognition at commencement." Bennett's face flushed with shame, his grip tightening until his knuckles whitened. Anger and humiliation boiled within him. But even faced with the truth, he refused to accept defeat. Not to Jennifer, not to Foster, not to anyone. Instead, he resolved to escalate his attack, to discredit her publicly before Sheikh Khalid and the entire room. Returning to the suite as Sheikh Khalid finished reviewing the remaining disputed items, the timing was perfect for the spectacle Bennett craved. He didn't waste a moment. Standing, his voice cut through the air. "Sorry to interrupt," he said coldly, "but I feel compelled to clarify something. Miss Carter, I just verified your background, and frankly, I'm surprised you actually hold the degree you claim." The room fell silent in shock. Sheikh Khalid turned to Bennett, visibly annoyed by his tone. Foster's face hardened instantly, but Bennett wasn't done. "You see, having a degree doesn't automatically make someone qualified," he continued, dripping with disdain. "Academic accolades are trivial if you can't prove real competence in the field. Isn't that true? To protect everyone's interests," he said loudly, "I believe Miss Carter must prove her competence here and now." His challenge, sharp with mockery and cloaked in pretense, carried the weight of long-held bias. But Jennifer didn't flinch. She rose slowly from her chair, facing Bennett directly with calm confidence. "Mr. Bennett," she said clearly, "I'm ready to answer any question you have. Go ahead, ask." Bennett smirked slightly, smugly. This was the trap he'd been waiting for. He sought the most complex concept he could recall, eager to see her fail. "Very well, Miss Carter," he said, with theatrical flourish. "Explain the equity kicker structure in the context of international real estate deals and its application to Section 11 of this contract." Whispers stirred around the room. Some Pinnacle team members exchanged worried glances. Equity kicker provisions were notoriously difficult to grasp, understood by few professionals. Bennett bet Jennifer couldn't handle the topic's depth, but she didn't waver. With steady, clear speech, Jennifer began. "An equity kicker is a provision allowing an investor or lender to earn additional returns if the project exceeds initial expectations," she started. "Specifically, Section 11 states that if the development generates profits beyond the projected benchmark, Pinnacle and the Dubai Investment Fund will share excess returns based on their original equity percentages." She paused to let her words sink in. This mechanism ensures both parties are motivated to perform well. It's a financial safeguard and performance incentive. Clear in the English version, but, again, misrepresented in the Arabic translation. The room seemed to hold its breath. Bennett had no response this time. His confidence drained, replaced by pale shock. Before he could reply, Sheikh Khalid's voice rang out, calm, clear, and firm. "Mr. Bennett," the Sheikh said, "I've observed your behavior in this meeting. Your repeated dismissal of Miss Carter and attempts to undermine her reflect not on her character, but on yours." Silence hit like a hammer. "I've tolerated you long enough," the Sheikh continued. "Let me say this now. If this negotiation fails, it won't be due to Pinnacle's terms or numbers. It will be because of the bias you brought into this room." Bennett sat paralyzed, his hands trembling, caught in a rare moment of public disgrace. Foster turned to him, his expression clearly disappointed. Jennifer stood tall, deeply moved inside. Never had a powerful figure supported her so clearly, but she knew this wasn't the end. Bennett, with his wounded pride, was now more dangerous. As the Sheikh's words faded, a heavy, ominous silence filled the room. Foster sat quietly, as if struck. He looked from Bennett to Jennifer, something shifting within him. For decades, Charles Foster had built pinnacle investments on public values: fairness, inclusion, equal opportunity. He'd repeated those words at conferences and board meetings. But here, in this very room, he'd witnessed those ideals falter. He had overlooked Jennifer, allowing his biases to blind him to her brilliance. Now he saw her, not just shining on this stage, but dominating it with strength and intellect. He understood this wasn't just about saving a deal. It was about rebuilding the company's culture from the inside out. When the meeting broke for a brief recess, Foster quietly approached Jennifer. "Miss Carter," he said softly, "may I speak with you a moment?" Surprised, Jennifer nodded and followed him to the corridor. There, away from the boardroom's eyes, Foster faced her, shedding his usual executive demeanor. For the first time, he was a real person, hesitant, vulnerable. "Jennifer," he said, "I owe you an apology. Not just as the company's representative, but personally. These past few days, I didn't see you for who you are. I let my own biases cloud my judgment." Jennifer held his gaze, calm but resolute. "Mr. Foster," she replied, "I accept your apology, but I'm not here for apologies. What matters is that we all deserve true recognition, respect, and fair opportunities." Her words hit quietly but powerfully. Foster nodded slowly, visibly moved. "You're right," he said. "It's time for change, and I'll start by formalizing that change." He looked into her eyes with genuine admiration. "I'm appointing you as senior financial advisor for this project. I'll inform our board and Sheikh Khalid personally. You've earned this, not out of pity, but because you're the most qualified person here." Jennifer was stunned, her chest trembling with emotion, but she quickly composed herself and smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Foster," she said. "But please understand, this isn't a gift. It's a responsibility I'll take seriously. I'll show that origins don't define ability." Foster nodded again, now with pride. "I know," he said, "and that's what Pinnacle needs now, a leader to guide us toward true fairness and innovation." They stood in the corridor, the silence between them filled with something deeper than words, a hard-earned understanding. As they returned to the boardroom, Foster spoke with firm, final authority. "Before we proceed," he said, "I have an important announcement." He paused, looking at Jennifer. "After all we've seen today, I'm formally appointing Miss Jennifer Carter as senior financial advisor for this transaction. From now on, she'll have independent authority to advise and decide on all technical matters." A wave of whispers spread through the room. Some were shocked, others impressed, a few offering soft applause in recognition. Jennifer nodded quietly in response, but couldn't help noticing Bennett in the corner. His face pale, jaw clenched, barely containing his rage. She knew he wouldn't give up, but now she had allies. The most significant part of this moment wasn't the applause or the title. It was that Foster chose to live his principles. This wasn't just words, it was action. But the meeting wasn't over, and Jennifer knew the hardest work lay ahead. Sheikh Khalid opened the contract's final pages, his gaze sweeping the room and lingering on Jennifer with deliberate depth. "I'm pleased to see Miss Carter on your official advisory team," he said. "But before we conclude, we must address one final issue." A quiet tension spread. Everyone sat straighter. "We need a protective clause," Sheikh Khalid continued. "It must guarantee veto power for the Dubai Investment Fund on high-risk financial decisions. This is the only way to protect us against the volatile US market. And let me be clear, This is non-negotiable." The room fell silent. Foster felt a pang of fear. He understood what this meant. Granting full veto power would mean surrendering Pinnacle's autonomy to manage the project, but refusing now could destroy the entire deal. He looked at Jennifer, his eyes pleading, "Help us here." Jennifer stood, calm and focused. Everything she'd learned, everything she'd overcome, converged in this moment. "Your Excellency," she began, "your concerns are valid, but I believe there's a more balanced solution, one that protects both parties while respecting each other's financial culture." Sheikh Khalid leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on, Miss Carter." Jennifer stepped to the whiteboard, picking up a marker and drawing a diagram, neat, efficient, precise. "Instead of full veto power," she explained, "we can implement a conditional veto mechanism." She drew clear lines as she spoke. The veto power activates only if projected returns fall below a set safety threshold. A joint oversight committee, equally represented by Pinnacle and the Dubai Fund, will review any flagged decisions. No action proceeds without a positive vote from both sides. She set down the marker and stepped back. This structure ensures transparency, accountability, and mutual protection. It's safeguarding, not control. Silence followed. Heads began to nod slowly. Foster was stunned by the elegant, unexpected solution. Even Bennett, silently seething, recognized Jennifer had crushed his last hope of regaining control. Sheikh Khalid leaned back and clapped once, then again. "Remarkable," he said. "Miss Carter, in all my years of global negotiations, few professionals could craft such a brilliant solution under pressure, with respect for both financial systems. You've earned my trust and more, my partnership." He looked at Foster firmly. "I'll sign this contract on one condition." Foster straightened. "What's that, Your Highness?" The Sheikh's gaze shifted to Jennifer. "I want Miss Jennifer Carter appointed as the primary advisor for this project, not just in title, but in every decision, every phase moving forward. Her voice must remain at the heart of this collaboration." The room seemed to hold its breath. Bennett slumped in his chair, defeated and sidelined. The balance of power had shifted, and he was no longer part of it. Foster stood, his voice clear and purposeful. "Your Highness, Pinnacle Investments accepts your condition. Jennifer Carter will serve as senior lead advisor for this project, with our organization's full support." Applause erupted, but Jennifer didn't smile. She stood tall, absorbing the moment's weight, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been overlooked, dismissed, or excluded for not fitting narrow standards. This wasn't the end. It was the start of a new chapter, one she would write, not just with talent and knowledge, but with the quiet power of dignity and recognition. Sheikh Khalid nodded with satisfaction and turned to Jennifer with a warm, praising smile. "Then we have a full understanding," he said, "and I hope this partnership brings not only financial success, but serves as a symbol of what's possible when ability is recognized without bias." As Foster extended his hand, the moment lingered like crystal. A soft but heartfelt applause spread through the boardroom, not loud but brimming with sincerity. Jennifer stood tall, the weight of her journey pressing on her chest, yet lifting her spirit. The multi-billion-dollar deal that nearly collapsed was now secured, but Jennifer knew the applause didn't mean the end. She caught Bennett's eyes across the room, his gaze still tight, simmering with quiet anger. His nature hadn't changed in defeat, and Jennifer knew true equality wouldn't be won with one victory. But something had shifted in the air. She felt it as the applause faded, and the final terms were confirmed. The expressions greeting her now were different, no longer dismissive or skeptical. They saw her for who she was, a leader, an expert, a woman of strength and integrity. Foster turned to address the room, his voice filled with pride and clarity. "Before we close, I want to thank someone without whom this wouldn't have been possible," he said, turning to Jennifer. "Miss Carter, your intellect, courage, and unwavering integrity made this deal your victory as much as anyone's. You've changed how we work, how we see, and how we lead." The room erupted in applause, louder now, filled with admiration and genuine respect. Jennifer's throat tightened. She nodded quietly, offering a modest smile, her heart full, yet standing firm, focused on the moment. In the corner, Bennett remained motionless, his face pale, confidence shattered. He knew what this meant. He hadn't just been outdone by Jennifer, she had dismantled the power balance he'd clung to, with no way back. Something remarkable happened. Sheikh Khalid approached Jennifer directly, his tone warm but purposeful. "Miss Carter," he said, "you've exceeded all expectations. I never thought someone could understand the complexities of Gulf finance in the US so deeply." He paused, then offered something extraordinary. "We plan to open an office for the Dubai Investment Fund here in the States, and I'd like to offer you the role of senior manager. With your insight, I know you'd lead it brilliantly." Silence blanketed the room. This wasn't just praise. It was a powerful offer, a role any global executive would dream of. Before Jennifer could respond, Foster stepped forward, visibly hesitant but resolute. "Your Highness," he said, "we're honored by your trust in Miss Carter. But with respect, I'd like to make a counteroffer." He turned to Jennifer. "Jennifer," he said sincerely, "I want you to lead our Strategic International Projects Division. You'd have full authority, compensation matching your value, and the freedom to shape our future. We don't just want your talent, we want your leadership." Jennifer was stunned for a moment. Two life-changing offers, two immense opportunities. Days ago, she was invisible in this very room. Now, the world watched, awaiting her decision. In the corner, Bennett seemed to lose all air, his silence louder than any words. Sheikh Khalid smiled gently. "This is your decision, Miss Carter," he said. "Whatever you choose, know I have complete confidence in you." Foster nodded. "We'll support you wherever you go. You've already shaped our future just by being you." The room fell silent again, all eyes on Jennifer. She took a deep breath and spoke with calm certainty. "I'm truly honored by both offers," she said. "This is more than a career step. It's proof that ability, not race or origin, is the true measure of our worth." She paused, resolute. "I'll take time to decide, but know that wherever I go, I'll give everything to lead with purpose, break barriers, and earn the trust you've placed in me." Applause erupted, heartfelt, full, and prolonged. Jennifer stood tall, prouder than ever. She hadn't just closed a deal, she'd opened a door long shut. She'd proven to the world that talent rises, no matter the forces trying to suppress it. And though she knew people like Bennett wouldn't vanish overnight, she also knew she was no longer alone in the fight. The next day, the entire Pinnacle Investments team gathered in the company's auditorium. As the staff settled, the room's hum quieted. Charles Foster stepped to the podium, looking at his employees, not with practiced authority, but with humble determination. His voice carried a sincerity rarely heard. Behind the scenes, Jennifer Carter, no longer invisible, prepared to take her place, not just at the table, but in leadership. Foster scanned the auditorium, his eyes landing on Jennifer in the front row. Her posture was poised, her face bright, calm, and humble. He took a deep breath, knowing his words would shape Pinnacle's legacy, and perhaps his own. "Dear colleagues," he began, I'm not here today to celebrate our $5 billion deal, though we have every reason to be proud. I'm here to talk about something more important, something I've carried these past few days. The room was silent, all eyes on the CEO. I'll admit, Foster continued, his voice softer, more open. I and Pinnacle Investments have long held unconscious biases. This deal exposed that truth. Miss Jennifer Carter, a woman we initially overlooked because of her race and title, opened my eyes to this. He paused, the weight of his words settling over the crowd. Year after year, we talk about diversity and inclusion, but we've failed to dismantle the silent barriers we've built. We've ignored them, let bias thrive beneath the surface. Foster looked directly at Jennifer, his voice growing firmer. Jennifer, I owe you a public apology, not just to you but to everyone here who's faced unfair judgment because of their race, gender, or origin. Today I pledge that Pinnacle will change. From now on, every person will be judged by one standard alone: their ability, effort, and impact. Applause erupted, heartfelt, loud, and long overdue. In the back, Richard Bennett stood like stone, staring at the floor, his body rigid. He knew his era of control was ending. Foster gestured toward Jennifer. As she stood and walked to the podium, applause surged again, following her like a wave of justice. She stood tall, and as the noise subsided, she began to speak. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm and clear. "It's an honor to stand here today, but I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to speak about something greater." The room fell silent, listening. For years I lived in the shadows, overlooked because of my origins and the assumptions tied to my name and background. I sent resumes, knocked on doors, proved myself over and over, yet I was unseen. My voice broke, but I'm not alone. Every day, countless others face the same injustice. They're brilliant, capable, determined, yet dismissed as if they're nothing. She took a deep breath. In my experience here at Pinnacle, I've learned a powerful truth. Hate doesn't end with hate. Only courage, dignity, and excellence can truly break bias. If we strive to see each other fully, not as titles or stereotypes, but as individuals with value, real change becomes possible. Tears welled in many eyes, even the toughest in the room moved. "I'm not speaking now for myself alone," Jennifer continued, "but for everyone who's been told they're not enough. You are enough, and when given the chance, you can soar." Applause roared, loud and unrelenting. Foster stepped forward again, his voice warm and firm. "I pledge that from now on, Pinnacle will act for true merit, equal opportunity, and justice, and Jennifer Carter will be the living symbol of that promise." The entire auditorium rose in a standing ovation. Jennifer looked around, struck by the moment's weight. In one corner, Bennett slipped out quietly, his silence a final surrender. But Jennifer wasn't celebrating revenge. She was celebrating justice. She hadn't just earned respect, she'd sparked change. On a bright spring morning, an open plaza in the heart of New York buzzed with life. A grand stage stood beneath a crystal blue sky, surrounded by thousands of guests, journalists, investors, and dignitaries. This was the groundbreaking ceremony for the $5 billion joint venture between Pinnacle Investments and the Dubai Investment Fund, a historic partnership that nearly failed. At the stage's center stood Dr. Jennifer Carter, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, every bit the global leader she was. Beside her were Charles Foster and Sheikh Khalid, both smiling with evident pride. Foster approached the podium, his voice ringing clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, today isn't just about a project. It's the start of a new era, an era built on integrity, justice, and opportunity. And the woman standing beside me embodies all that and more. Dr. Jennifer Carter. Applause erupted, many standing, cheers filled with admiration. Sheikh Khalid nodded deeply, his trust in Jennifer fully vindicated. The occasion was a triumph. As Jennifer stepped down from the stage, dozens of international investors approached with admiration and respect, shaking hands, offering congratulations, and exchanging praise. But through it all, Jennifer remained grounded, knowing her success wasn't just for her. It was proof, undeniable proof, that no one should be judged by their past, appearance, or origins. What matters is what they can contribute when given the chance. Even in this moment of triumph, Jennifer noticed one figure standing quietly in the distance. Richard Bennett, alone, powerless, a shadow of the man who once controlled the room. His face was heavy with regret and resentment. Jennifer took a soft breath. This wasn't about defeating one person. It was about revealing a deeper truth for her and for anyone still clinging to old assumptions, a truth that could no longer be ignored. That afternoon, Jennifer entered her new office on the top floor of the project's sleek headquarters. The modern bright space offered a view of the Manhattan skyline. As she approached her desk, she noticed a small, elegant wooden box neatly placed at its center, intricately carved with Arabic designs, smooth to the touch. Inside was a gold pen and a letter handwritten by Sheikh Khalid. She opened the letter and read slowly. Judge a person by their inner worth, not their outward form. With deep respect and admiration for Dr. Jennifer Carter, who reminds us all what true merit means. Jennifer smiled softly, placing the pen back in the box. She leaned back in her chair, turned to the window, and gazed at the vibrant city below. She began to reflect, not just on the battles she'd won, but on the journey that brought her here. From the sting of rejection letters that never mentioned race but carried its weight, to long hours serving coffee just to survive, to standing before the industry's most powerful and earning, not forcing, their respect. But Jennifer knew this success wasn't hers alone. It was a message, a light, a beacon for all those unseen, doubted, or silenced. You can rise, you can break barriers, you can change the very system that tries to hold you back. In the quiet calm, Jennifer felt a deeper purpose, a mission beyond any title or project. Her role was clear: to keep leading, speaking, guiding, and pushing the world toward justice. Not just at Pinnacle, not just in finance, but in every industry, every boardroom, every classroom, every corner of society too often overlooked. She closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and embraced the quiet strength that had carried her this far. When she opened her eyes, there was no fear, only certainty. Out there, someone else was waiting for their moment, someone like her, and Jennifer would help light their way. She stood from her chair and approached the wide glass window. The sunlight warmed her face, a faint smile on her lips. This wasn't just a new beginning for her. It was the start of something bigger, a movement, a wave of change she knew could reach cities, cultures, and continents, a change that would finally show the world the true character of its people. Thank you for listening. It's your friend, Mr. Hope. If you're new to this channel, please tap the notification bell and subscribe. Your support helps us keep sharing free stories across our channels.